Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, and it's also nearly time for me to take this daily tech podcast on the road again, because next week I'm going to be covering the Magento Imagine event live in Las Vegas. And there are a few things that excite me about the event, because Magento is now an Adobe company after Adobe famously acquired Magento Commerce for, I think it was 1.68 billion last year. But they have a passionate and welcoming open source community, and I want to investigate if that's still intact and still the same since the acquisition. And I genuinely hope that that community vibe is as strong as ever. Now, the Imagine event started 8 years ago with a grand vision to connect the global e-commerce community. And today it brings together 3,000 e-commerce experts, including merchants, agencies, and especially attractive for me, of course, technology providers from over 50 countries. And just like this show, the event aims to unite its audience and sends out a message that together we can inspire, advance, educate, collaborate, and enjoy a unique experience. And also, of course, Gary Vaynerchuk is going to be speaking at the event, which for me personally is going to feel like that I've come completely full circle, because 5 years ago I was the IT guy listening and watching Gary Vaynerchuk on the train to work, building my side hustle. And this year I'm going to be sat in Vegas watching him speak live, but as a full-time freelancer. So that's going to be a big moment for me. Won't be a dry eye in the house. But while talking about commerce, I think there is so much talk about e-commerce and bricks and mortar retail and of course the retail apocalypse. But I want to take a step back from all that dramatic language and learn more about how it's not about the end of retail, but how it's evolving into something completely different. And I want to talk about SHOWFIELDS today, which is a 4-story, 14,707 square foot space at 11 Bond Street in New York City. And it's home to a rotating selection of nearly 30 brands. And today I've invited Nathanel, and he's the CEO of SHOWFIELDS, onto this podcast because I want to discuss the future of retail and how it's an evolving industry right now. And with SHOWFIELDS, Nathanel has actually created an entirely new approach to brick and mortar that makes opening a new store as easy as launching a website. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to New York so we can speak with Nathanel, CEO of SHOWFIELDS. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so my name is Tal. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of SHOWFIELDS. SHOWFIELDS is the most interesting store in the world. It's a place where customers can walk in and engage and shop and just discover brands they couldn't see until today because they were mostly online.
Now, for people listening all over the world, SHOWFIELDS is a 4-story, 14,707 square foot space at 11 Bond Street in New York that's home to a rotating selection of nearly 30 brands, including Quip, the Farmer's Dog, and Shopify's first physical presence, and so much more. But for our international listeners, can you just help them visualize exactly what this space is and what makes it so special?
So to understand how the space kind of looks like, it's important to understand the meaning behind SHOWFIELDS. So SHOWFIELDS is a name made from 2 words, right? We have show and we have field. And this is how we pretty much think about the space. So our stores, and the one in 11 Bond to be the first one of them, is dedicated 50% for content, art, exhibition, events. This is where we try to infuse the content and the value for the customers walking into the door, to give them a reason to visit here once a day, once a week, once a month, and not like once a year, like they would to their usual department store. And the other 50% is what we call fields. These are the spaces where we basically host those amazing brands, which until today lived only online. The result from a customer perspective is being able to walk into a space which is full of surprises. It's four floors of wonder, from like an event space to like an art floor, which was space which is dedicated only to design brands, to art exhibitions, to a slide, to being able to see and touch products which were, online only. So you heard about them, you saw the ad, but you were dying to kind of touch them. This is the first time you can touch and actually purchase them. So the reason, by the way, we call ourselves the most interesting store in the world is not because we, in any shape or form, think that we are interesting, but rather only because we host those amazing brands and experiences, which together create a very interesting experience for the customer. But I invite you all to kind of judge by yourselves and say if we live up to that statement.
Now, on this Daily Tech podcast, I do try and share stories of how businesses are thinking differently and, as a result, transforming their businesses with technology. And bricks and mortar retail is going through an incredibly tough time at the moment, and that's including over here in the UK and over there in the US. But I invited you on the show today to talk about the other side of the coin. So can you tell me more about how you created an entirely new approach to brick and mortar retail that's actually making opening a store as easy as just launching a website?
Yeah, so I think that it's a very common very common thing we hear lately. Retail is dead. But if you ask me, I think that retail is actually more alive and thriving than any other time before. Every industry goes into changes. You look at the music industry, you look at the printing industry, you look at the video industry. They evolve, and they evolve according to the needs of the customer. And those changes are always for the better and are always led by the consumer itself. So the only thing that we are seeing here is exactly that. Retail is no different whatsoever. We are just in the midst of a very big part or a very big evolution process. And the only question we should ask ourselves is basically kind of what's next. This is kind of our starting point, right? We always assume that retail is not going to go everywhere. That retail is not going to go anywhere. This is why, by the way, usually when I meet with investors, I walk into the room with a brick, because when you kind of hold the brick in your hand, it's very evident that bricks are not going anywhere. We might, but bricks are kind of here to stay. So it kind of makes you understand that retail was here forever and it's going to stay here forever. The only question then is what's the usage. And once you understand that what's next and what's the usage is the only question you should ask, then I think it kind of opens your mind to rethink many parts of the process, or to challenge many assumptions that people didn't dare to challenge for many years. Part of those assumptions that we needed to challenge were, how hard it is to do retail, or how, who can do retail, I should say, is one of the first challenges, or one of the first assumptions we needed to challenge. When looking at the way that the world is kind of built today, 97%, I want to say, from the brands, they can't even contemplate the thought of opening a physical store. Why? Because price per square foot is extremely high, because there is no small spaces, because landlords more than ever are looking for more very well-known secure tenants, because they're looking for a 20-year lease, because it requires a set of skills that most brands just don't have. So together, all of those things prevent the majority of the brands there to even think about building a store. So one of the first things that we wanted to do is to make retail accessible to more and more and more brands. And so we decided to turn the process of opening a store to become as easy as opening a website. 6 steps, and in the end, you can have your physical stores. By doing that, we can actually now unlock retail for thousands or dozens of thousands of brands of all around the world, and reshuffle, the possibilities for everyone. And then, with the hope that the result is going to be a very good consumer experience, giving back the power to the consumer, because either way, he has it.
I've got to ask, what's the story behind this move, and what inspired this approach that you're taking? It's incredibly forward-thinking.
Thank you. So, the first spark was my expectation from retail. So, as as an Israeli, as a kid who was growing up abroad and always dreamed about how New York should look like. My mother was a window dresser, so for me it was even a bit more dramatic because I kind of grew up on design magazines. So I always had this picture of like all the magic that there are in the streets of New York. And around few years back, I moved, to New York, and I see that there is like no magic whatsoever. And this is kind of, I want to say, the first thing that kind of felt wrong. Add to that the fact that, I'm like everyone else, live online. I see that I'm surrounded with, thousands of amazing brands. I see that very awkwardly. I actually enjoy ads on social media. I enjoy ads on Instagram. Here, I said it. I really like ads. I think that they're great. And they are like curated for me, and they're always interesting, and I just love it. So why? Like, how could it be? Why are the streets so boring in Tokyo, Paris, London, Tel Aviv? They all look the same. And, my feed is interesting. And the reason is that all of those amazing brands that came into manifestation in the last decades are just nowhere to be found in the physical space. So this was kind of the inspiration for us to start on that journey, and ask the question that we said earlier: what next? Because if we know that brick-and-mortar is not going anywhere, and we know for a fact that the brands are there, the brands exist, they're so interesting, amazing, trying to solve daily kind of, consumer problems, they're there, the space is there, then the only question is, how do they all come together? And once this was our assumption, and the only question is how, then the rest, was kind of easier to at least think about, right? Because only when you know the question, you can really get the answer.
So how do you think retail is evolving and focusing on experiences and community building, not just sales now? And is that something that you're noticing more and more?
Yeah, so I think that when we try to imagine how the future of retail looks like, and what is it going to entail, then I think it's important to talk about our starting point, right? So we were raised to think that there are two pillars of retail. There is traditional retail, which this is all the retail that we know, right? Those are the brick-and-mortar department stores, the category killers, the big boxes. This is traditional retail. And there is another pillar, which is e-commerce. E-commerce is growing massively year after year, and traditional retail is stagnant. And this is why the only way to connect dots is, okay, e-commerce is basically eating traditional retail. But what's really happening, and where the future is taking us, is that it's imagine that there are two continents which are slowly moving one towards the other, and eventually are going to become one. And this new land is actually going to be ruled by the consumer. So what we think the future's retail is going to be is this new continent. It's going to be the age of customer. We like to call it e-commerce. And when we try to think of what is this new category, that leaves, that's kind of going to, that is between digital and physical and going to encompass everything, it actually has it has few aspects which are very unique to that. And as you said, I think that, community is a very big part of it, and content is a very big part of it. By the way, I'm saying content and not experience. People like to throw the word experiential or Instagrammable moments lately, where we actually believe that it doesn't really hold today. Today's customer is looking for authenticity, is looking for, is more sophisticated than they were before. So it's really not about how it looks, unless it starts with what it is. So content should be about kind of the what, and experience is the how. And if you just focus on the experience, it doesn't hold anymore. So content is a very big part of it, and connection, connecting all the platforms. So it's going to be a seamless experience for the customers, are really the pillars of what we call e-commerce, and how I think the future of retail is going to look like. And I'll just end by saying that I also see that there are many companies that knowingly or unknowingly are also in the midst of this kind of migration to the new lands, and are doing an amazing job. So, it's totally doable. And as a platform, what SHOWFIELDS is trying to do is really help brands, on their journey, and kind of building towards that future of what the next phase of retail is going to be and giving them all the tools to be successful there.
Now, a few moments ago, you did mention the phrase C-commerce or consumer commerce, which is a term I believe that was originally coined by yourself. Can you just expand on that and what it means?
Yeah, so we call the next phase of the evolution of retail C-commerce, which, as you said, is consumer commerce. By the way, like the 5 principles that actually made this principle that makes consumer commerce are also what we call like the 5 C's, because they all start with C. And those are like convenience, content, community, curation, and connection. We coined that term because we just wanted to be able to clearly, communicate or stress that there is something new, right? The future of retail is not e-commerce. And the future of retail is not brick and mortar. The future of retail is something else. And this is why we needed to coin a new term, because that's the only way to understand it. And it's very important to also understand as a result that like both of the existing categories would need to evolve. It's really not about like, those, the Macy's of the world or the Sears of the world, they need to evolve. The same way the traditional retail needs to evolve, the same exact way e-commerce players who are strictly online would need to evolve. They both have the exact same kind of challenges that they need to do, and they both need to migrate to the same place. And for both of them, if they want to do this next step of the evolution, we believe that they would find themselves like obsolete eventually, because the customer would just won't be there.
So why is it, do you think, that legacy brands such as JCPenney and Gap are actually falling victim to the so-called retail apocalypse, while digital-first brands such as Casper and Untuckit are actually accelerating their physical presence and enjoying great success as a result?
Yeah. So, but think about like what you said for a second, right? We're looking at Casper, we're looking at Warby Parker, brands which, if 2 years ago we would have this discussion, or 3 years ago they would be the top of the pure plays companies in the world, right? One of the top 50 pure plays. Pure play is a company which is strictly online. Most of them were quoted and were proud by the fact that they are going to be only online. And those companies today are one of the most successful companies and most exciting companies out there. And we look up to them because they're doing an amazing job. But they did it because they evolved. They understood that the customer is both here and there. They understood that physical is about ways to engage customers. It's about ways to build a brand. It's about ways to do sales. It's about a way to find new customers. There's so many other things. They're successful not because they stay online. They're successful because they evolve. So when you ask me, and I don't want to go to any specific name of traditional retailers who is not kind of evolving, but my point is that the same way as e-commerce brands have naturally evolved, traditional retailers would need to evolve. And I can tell you, like as a good example, that I think that Kohl's is doing, in the US is doing an amazing job, kind of doing that. And I think that some are doing less of a great job, but and they kind of see the results. But it's really possible to completely evolve as long as you kind of follow those principles. And that's all. I'll give the benefit. It's also important to understand that when you're looking at businesses which, there's like very big macro kind of effects that are also going, which are not making the life of traditional retailers easy. They have a lot of square footage, and transitioning a business which has 100,000 employees is always harder than transitioning a business which or started as a startup. So this is kind of part of that. But I think that both of them can evolve, and there are some great examples of traditional retailers who do evolve. And this is kind of what gives me the hope for what's next.
And like I said a few moments ago, the future of retail is not about e-commerce or even brick and mortar. It's about creating something completely different. So how do you envision the future of retail is going to look like, and how do you see it continuing to evolve?
So I think that the future of retail is first and foremost promising. It is bright, it is fun, it's more engaging, and it's completely consumer-centric. It's all about the customer, where he wants, what he wants, and how he wants it. So this is why, I'm very excited to see kind of what's next. If I need to become more to kind of dive in and give a more kind of technical question from the brand perspective, I think what brands would need to eventually do is start looking at all, the places that they can interact with customer as channels. So it doesn't matter if it's a store, if it's a subway ad, if it's a street sign, or if it's, or if it's an online banner, or if it's their store. All of those places, all of those points are going to be brand touch points or channels, and they're all going to be equal. They're all going to be ways for you to touch the customer. And once everything is going to be connected, which is a very big part of, the pillars of e-commerce, everything is connected. And it doesn't matter for you where the customer started the transaction or finish it, because by the way, it surely doesn't matter to him. Like, this is the basic expectation of a customer, is being able to start something here and finish it there. Why? Because this is how my Netflix works, this is how my Amazon works, and this is how my Spotify works. I can move platforms seamlessly. Same expectation I have when I am doing shopping. So once everything is connected, brands would not care where it started or where it ended. There's going to be full attribution, and in that point, and when we reach that kind of moment, then everything is just going to be a brand touch point. Consumer is going to gain because he's going to get a way better type of experience. And I think that when we reach that point, then finally retail, physical retail, is going to be able to show ROI to many, 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 many dozens of thousands of more brands around the world, which will then next, bring back the glory of the physical, and you will stop hearing things like the apocalypse or very gloomy words, which is really strange how this whole thing started. But it sounds so dramatic. I'm sorry for that.
But what's next for SHOWFIELDS? Is there anything else you can share with us today about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I think that, or the way that we think about it, right? The problem we're trying to solve from the consumer perspective is global. Meaning, a person walking in the streets of Tokyo, Paris, London, Istanbul, or Tel Aviv, they all have the same problem. Streets are boring. Online is interesting. And from a brand perspective, all over the world, they have the exact same problem. They want to meet the customer, but they can't because it's hard. And by the way, it used to be hard physically and relatively more doable online. And today, it's also impossible for the majority of the emerging brands to get in front of you on Instagram or on Facebook because it's just too expensive. So they are looking to get in front of you. So if our assumption is correct, then there is no limit to, how many SHOWFIELDS can be out there, as long as we look at ourselves as a platform and just try to facilitate that meaning between the brand and the customer. So when you ask me what's next, my only inspiration is that we would have the opportunity to host more exciting brands around the world and to serve more customers and, meeting those brands all around the world.
So when it comes to driving inspiration today, where do you guys drive inspiration into SHOWFIELDS?
Yeah, so it's a great question because we actually look a lot to the roots of retail when we are trying to think about what is next. I think that, when you're thinking about places like Bon Marché, the first department store, or 100 years later, Selfridges, it's very interesting to see that they got many things right. Selfridges, which is obviously kind of located in London, is one of our very biggest kind of mains of inspiration. If you look on the first press releases that Selfridges ever did, they speak about community and they speak about discovery before they talk about shopping or merchandising. When the first Selfridges opened, it was about allowing a customer to touch the product. You didn't know what silk is. You heard about it maybe, but you could never touch it. this is the first time you could. You didn't have to buy it, but you can touch it. And there was no internet. There's, no catalogs. It's only in the beginning. So you have the ability to do so. It was a very, very, very exciting experience for people to be able to see. There's like the intersection of technology and the intersection of discovery. And I think that, Selfridges is one thing that we kind of very look up to. And another fun piece of information is that the building that we took on 11 Bond is actually a 106 years old building. And that building, we opened it to the public on the same day without knowing originally, but it's the same day that Selfridges opened 110 years ago, which was March 15. And it's something that we are, kind of very excited that the retail stars have aligned about.
What a fantastic story. It's almost like retail's come full circle with that story, isn't it?
Exactly. Again, they are a giant, and we are just trying to, in many ways, walk in their footsteps. So it's a great compliment. But, we are trying our best.
So for anyone listening that wants to actually see what SHOWFIELDS looks like, and they can't get to New York right here and right now, or maybe just planning a future trip to New York, can you remind them of where they can find you online? Maybe look at a video or pictures of it, everything in action, or maybe even just contact a member of your team if they have any questions. Yeah.
So I think that a good way to get a glimpse of what we do is our Instagram. So SHOWFIELDS _NYC is our hashtag. Or you can just kind of search SHOWFIELDS with an S in the end at Instagram. Another good way is just going to showfields.com. So those, I guess, would be the best ways to do that. In our website, there's many ways to contact us according to what it is that you're trying, what department you're looking for. But from my experience, just DM on Instagram would be the quickest way to engage. And we are also located in 11 Bond, so the corner of kind of Lafayette and Bond Street in New York.
Well, like you said, we have talked about a lot of dramatic language there. And what my big takeaway that I'm walking away from our conversation today is retail's not dying at all. It's evolving, and it's evolving to meet the new demands of the modern digital customer. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to come and speak with me today and share that story and offer some positivity about the world of retail and technology. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I think the future is bright, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I think SHOWFIELDS is one of the most interesting stores in the world. And in so many ways, it's a revolutionary retail concept that invites you to discover and engage with the brands of tomorrow. And I love today's conversation because of just how much we covered here. For example, how retail is evolving to focus on experiences and community building, not just sales. And C-commerce, or consumer commerce, the term that was coined by Nathanel, is actually used to define the innovative retail concept that bridges the gap between physical and digital retail. But the biggest takeaway is exactly how we finished the interview for me, and how it is not about e-commerce versus bricks and mortar. Every aspect of the media is obsessed with this argument. But the truth is, it's actually evolving into something completely different. And that is the exciting part. But over to you. You've heard today's guests showcase how they're doing things differently. You've heard my opinions, but I want to hear yours too. And you can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Visit my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, or you can get me on a variety of social channels just by looking for Neil C. Hughes. One of the reasons I created this platform was so that we could all make our voice heard. So I'll hope you'll use it and send me a quick hello and keep those questions coming in. Other than that, I'll see you bright and early, same time, same place tomorrow for another interview and another story about how technology is transforming a different industry. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.